Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. This is going to be a jam-packed edition, so I'm not going to waste much time before I get into it. I've got a lot of stuff to play for you. But just quickly, before I do, I can tell from looking at the numbers that there are a lot of new listeners that have discovered After 9 very recently. So thank you and welcome. I hope you enjoy what you're about to hear and what you have been hearing. Yesterday, I talked a lot about the situation in Minnesota. A lot of people have messaged me to say, wow, I had never heard that from Hillary Clinton, or I had never heard President Obama say that, or even I forgot President Obama, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. I forgot that at one point they were totally in favor of mass deportations, just like President Trump is doing now. But of course, now that Trump is doing it, many of those leaders from the Democrats are firmly opposed to what's going on, even though they were once in favor of it. Thank you very much to the people who took the time to message me and say, I feel like I was misinformed. That's certainly not what I saw in the news. That's not what I saw on social media. I just thought that it was outrageous that ICE would shoot somebody. I agree with you. And frankly, so far, I haven't seen a compelling reason for that happening. I haven't. I'm waiting for the investigation to happen, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. In fact, one of the things I decided to do after reading some great comments yesterday was dig up some more audio. So you're going to hear more of President Obama and Secretary Clinton in this episode of After 9, but not right away. First off, I've got to talk about some of the things that have happened in the last 24 hours. I want to start with the most recent. Last night on the Fox News channel on a show called Hannity, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, was on, and he made a comment about our prime minister. It's a little weird that we're finding out about this from a U.S. government official instead of from the prime minister's office, but apparently Mark Carney and Donald Trump had a phone call yesterday. Doesn't sound like it went very well. Listen to this.
And interest rates will be down significantly. They're already down quite a bit. Let's talk about the Prime Minister, or if you prefer, Governor of Canada, and him threatening to break economic alliances with the U.S., go with China. The president has threatened a 100% tariff. What impact would that have?
It would be a disaster for Canada. I was in the Oval with the president today. He spoke to Prime Minister Carney, who was very aggressively walking back some of the unfortunate remarks he made at Davos. And Sean, I'm not sure what the Prime Minister was thinking. Of course, Canada depends on the U.S. There's much more north-south trade than there could ever be east-west trade. He talks about middle countries having to do their own thing. And I'm old enough to remember when French President Francois Mitterrand tried to go down that route. It failed back in the 80s. It'll fail now. And Canada is linked to the U.S., and the Prime Minister should do what's best for the Canadian people rather than trying to push his own globalist agenda.
Wow. A lot in there from Secretary Bessent. Listen, I agree with him wholeheartedly that we do a heck of a lot more north-south trade than anything else. But I'm wondering about that phone call that apparently happened between Prime Minister Carney and President Trump. What Secretary Bessent here is saying is that Prime Minister Carney aggressively, and that's a quote, tried to walk back the comments that he made in Davos at the World Economic Forum. Now, that was a speech that globalists loved. Middle powers unite. We are going to stand up to the Americans. We've got a lot of strength in numbers, and if we unite, we can take on the Americans. It seems now that Prime Minister Carney is seriously walking that back, and frankly, I'm not sure why. The Prime Minister seemed proud of the speech he gave. Why would he walk that back? Did the messaging change, or is Prime Minister Carney just caught off guard by the fact that the president did not like that speech very much? It was intended for the globalists at the World Economic Forum. That was a message that they can get behind and cheer on. It's a feel-good message for them. President Trump, I never expected would like it, and it turns out he didn't. But I am surprised that the prime minister would backtrack. I'm also very surprised that there was no readout from the prime minister's office. Typically, after the prime minister and the president have a phone call, both sides will issue a statement or a readout of what was discussed and anything that was resolved. That never happened in this case. No readout. So I guess we don't really know. We've got the U.S.'s side of the story. I'd like to hear Mark Carney's side of the story. Did he actually try and walk back the comments he made to the World Economic Forum when he was talking directly to President Trump yesterday? Did he capitulate to President Trump? What did he tell him about the deal that he's done with China? What did he tell him about his future plans with China? And how does the president feel about that? We're entitled to much more information than we've got here in front of us right now. It is incumbent on the Prime Minister to get out and talk to Canadians and answer questions from the media and tell us exactly what went on this phone call with President Trump. I'm certainly not accusing Secretary Bessent of being a liar, but that's his side of the story. I'd like to hear the Canadian side of the story. If nobody in the PMO minds, I shouldn't have to ask for this. We should get it automatically. Where's the readout of this phone call with President Trump? And why wasn't it released right away? Why the secrecy? If I have to guess, and it's just a guess, but an educated one, I tend to think this did not go very well. I tend to think this was not a particularly good phone call if the Prime Minister's office didn't rush to put out a readout. But I'll leave it at that because, again, we don't know, but we should know. And that is on the PMO to get that information out. Yesterday, the Prime Minister did make an announcement. He was in the Nepean area at a grocery store to announce kind of something that Justin Trudeau announced last year. It's a little bit money back in the form of a GST rebate for groceries. Let's take some time here and listen to Prime Minister Carney's remarks.
Look, we're in a situation where, and Canadians know this, the world's rapidly changing. That's leaving a cloud of uncertainty and worry hanging over all of us, Canadian businesses, Canadian workers, Canadian families. Our government's focused on what we can control, and that starts with building a stronger, more resilient Canadian economy. So Canada is less reliant on a single trading partner, and we are more resilient to global shocks, what happens outside of our country.
Okay, so far, nothing wrong with any of that. The Prime Minister is quite right. We do need to focus on building our economy here at home. But of course, that's not why he was there. He was there to announce something about groceries and a GST rebate. Let's see if this is it.
So we're starting to fundamentally transform our economy, building a stronger, more resilient, more independent Canada. It's already getting results. Dozens of new partnerships abroad, launching Build Canada homes, fast-tracking major nation-building projects. Our economy.
Whoa, and whoa. I don't know where he's coming from on that. I mean, the Canada Homes thing has been a complete and total bust. There's virtually no homes getting built. In fact, homes that were already in progress are being canceled now. Builders can't get financing. A lot of people in the trades are being laid off because we're not building any homes. That has been an abject failure. New partnerships? Okay, but I haven't seen the results of any of that yet. I've seen some announcements. I've seen some MOUs signed, but nothing concrete happening right now. And fast-tracking nation-building projects, I mean, nothing is approved. Absolutely nothing yet. It's been almost a year with Prime Minister Carney, and we've seen a lot of announcements. We've put a lot of kilometers on the Prime Minister's jet. We've stayed in a lot of hotels, but nothing is actually done yet. Not to say that it won't get done, but so far, absolutely nothing. You know, I think the Prime Minister is being a little misleading there, or maybe he doesn't fully understand that all the things he said he wants done have not gotten done. Does the buck stop with him? Does the buck stop with the ministers below him, with the new bureaucracies that he's created? I don't know whose fault it is, but no progress has been made so far. Nearest I can tell anyway. I don't see shovels in the ground anywhere on nation-building projects, on homes, or whatever. I don't quite know where he's coming from on that one. But let's get back to the Prime Minister's remarks.
Our economy, Canada's economy, has created 190,000 jobs on net since August. In absolute terms, that's more than the United States over the same period. We have the right plan. The world is knocking at our door, and momentum is building.
If the Prime Minister really thinks that we've created more jobs than the Americans, I really don't know where he's coming from. Is that a reality that you're experiencing? Because every time I watch the news, even the mainstream media news can't cover up the fact that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs being lost. Now, granted, at Christmas time, there were some seasonal positions that were created, There were some government ministries that hired. There was some part-time work that was created, but there's certainly not 190,000 good-paying careers that have been established here under Mark Carney. In fact, that might even be in the negative when you factor in all of the job losses. So again, the prime minister being misleading on that. I understand why he wants to stand up and say all these feel-good things before he gets to a speech about how much Canadians need relief at the grocery store, for goodness sake. But this is just not accurate. It's not accurate at all. And as far as his comment about the world is knocking at our door, I don't understand why the prime minister is the one flying all around the world. And he's already given us a heads up. He does not plan on being in Canada much this year. Says he's going to travel the world in search of trade deals. Well, if things are that good, wouldn't people be coming to us? I don't understand why there's not a lineup on Wellington Street of foreign leaders trying to get what we offer. If things are going that well, if we've done everything right, why are we going out, hat in hand, begging for trade deals? Why aren't they coming here to us? He says all the time, we've got what the world needs. We've got what the world wants. Then why aren't they here asking for it? Why are we going there? It's a weird thing. I mean, this seems a lot like smoke and mirrors here, and I expect that from politicians. I get it. That's kind of what they do. But let's be honest with people. Times are tough right now, and I don't think anybody wants to be lied to at the moment. Am I wrong?
But as the Minister of Finance just said, the biggest payoffs will take time. And many Canadians are feeling the pressures right now of everyday expenses. Canadians need a boost today and a bridge to tomorrow. And that's why Canada's new government has been relentlessly focused on making life more affordable for Canadians. On day one, we canceled the consumer carbon tax, bringing down gas prices by 18 cents a litre. We then cut taxes for 22 middle-class Canadians, saving a two-income family up to $840 this year. We've cut taxes for first-time home buyers, saving them up to $50,000 on their first home purchase. Out east, we've reduced tolls for vehicles on the Confederation Bridge, cutting them from over $50 to $20, and cut fares by 50% on ferries in Atlantic Canada. As the Minister just mentioned, we launched automatic federal benefits, which will help 5.5 million lower-income Canadians get the benefits to which they are entitled, like the disability tax credit, and indeed the new measures that we're announcing today.
Before he announces those measures, how many of those things have actually affected you and your family? You know, he talked about canceling the carbon tax, and yes, that temporarily did bring down gas prices, for sure. We were paying close to $1.40 a liter. Well, if they came down 18 cents, they're back up 10, because the average right now is $1.34 across the country and $1.29.9 in the GTA. So I don't know if he can brag about that, because the other part of the, not the consumer portion, but the industrial portion of the carbon tax is still in effect. And that's the reason that our gas prices are so high. The Prime Minister said he's focused relentlessly on bringing down the cost of living. And frankly, when I think about all the things that he just announced, and if you want to hear them again, hit that back 10 seconds button a couple of times and you'll hear it. You can hear it again. I can't think of any of those things that actually impacted me or middle-class Canadians. I mean, I don't live out east and I don't take the Confederation Bridge, so that really does nothing for me. There was the tax cut. Well, that only lasted until December 31st because payroll taxes went up, and that basically canceled out the tax credit. There's not been a lot for the middle class, and I'm not sure that this government fully understands that. I don't know if they get it. Let me put it to you this way. If I asked Prime Minister Carney, how much do you think someone has to make to live a true, traditional, middle-class lifestyle? Cars in the driveway, decent house, manageable mortgage, kids in school and in sports, take a vacation once, maybe twice a year, some savings, not a ton, but you're making it by. You've got food on the table, roof over your head, and some basic luxuries. That's the middle class that I'm thinking of. How much money do you think the Prime Minister thinks you would need to make to have that lifestyle now? I'll bet you he has no clue. I'll bet you he has no idea. That cost is now projected at north of $150,000 a year. And to be honest with you, it's probably closer to $180,000 a year before you could truly be somewhat comfortable in being able to afford your monthly bills and have that so-called middle class dream. It's about $180,000 a year. Anything less than that, and you're not getting ahead toward that middle class dream. I'll bet you the Prime Minister has absolutely no idea what that statistic is. I don't think he can relate to middle class Canadians. You know, he goes out and does these announcements and talks about all the ways that he's trying to bring down the cost of living, but they all just seem to fall a little flat, you know? They're very targeted, and it doesn't seem to affect too many people. Not people in my circles anyway, regular middle class Canadians that are really struggling to get by right now. So what you're about to hear is him making the announcement of exactly what he is going to do as far as a rebate on groceries from the GST. Here is, once again, Prime Minister Mark Carney.
Now, bigger picture, overall inflationary pressures are easing. The consumer price inflation rate is back in the Bank of Canada's target range, and average wages in our country have consistently grown faster than the rate of inflation since this government took office. Fees for childcare across Canada have dropped by around 35% over the last 3 years, thanks to our child care program.
He is right. Daycare expenses have gone down, but no, that has nothing to do with Mark Carney. That was a Justin Trudeau thing. I mean, Carney's going to get the political benefit of it, but it was Trudeau that brought that in and really rammed that through. Has your salary gone up higher than the rate of inflation? Because that was the claim from the Prime Minister there. And I don't think that that's very connected to reality. I don't think the average Canadian feels that way. You know, the Prime Minister is saying these things on television as if they're a fact. I'm just fact checking him here and asking the simple question, is that your lived experience? Is that the reality that you're experiencing? Because frankly, I don't think it is.
The average cost of cell services has fallen by more than 40% since 2020. That is, if you're able to switch plans. Gas prices have dropped by 14% from where they were a year ago, helped by that elimination of the consumer carbon tax. That's all good news. And with our economic plan kicking into gear, there's more good news on the horizon.
I'll let you guys make up your own mind on that. I mean, he says things are great. He says things are great and they're getting better. But they'll be even better if we just give him a little more time. Okay, but I mean, this government's been in power for over 10 years. Carney's new, but the rest of them have been there for over a decade now. Is your life any better now than it was in 2016? I'm going to venture a guess that no. For the vast majority of people anyway, things have done nothing but get more expensive and more complicated. We're living in a much more divided country, and frankly, I don't think gaslighting like that helps. I think Canadians want a Prime Minister who understands what they're going through and wants to put concrete things on the table to improve affordability. And it looks like that's what the Prime Minister is about to do here. I think after all of that preamble about how great things are in Canada right now, I think now he's ready to acknowledge we have record numbers of Canadians going to food banks, and this is not going very well. Here's the Prime Minister.
So last week, just a few days ago, in Quebec City, our cabinet convened and we focused on how to make life more affordable for Canadians now, and also how to tackle the root causes of food insecurity in Canada. Those deliberations including a long conversation with Kirsten Beardsley, the CEO of Food Banks Canada, to talk about these critical issues and what different levels of government can do to address them. You know, one of the best things, and there are many great things about our country, but one of the best things about our country is that we look out for each other. That we believe our economy is strongest when it serves every Canadian. So we're acting today, Canada's new government is acting today to provide a boost to those Canadian families who most need one, while creating a bridge to longer-term food security and affordability. Everyone pays the same GST on items that they buy, no matter how much money they make. But since groceries and other essentials make up a larger share of the budget of lower-income Canadians, the GST puts a higher burden on those less well off. The GST credit has helped to make our tax system fairer by returning a portion of the federal sales tax to Canadians with lower incomes, providing relief for people who feel the extra cost at the checkout most acutely. The rise in food prices means that a lot of these Canadians need more support right now. So today we're announcing that our government is launching the new Canada's Groceries and Essentials benefit. This will deliver hundreds of dollars more into the bank accounts of more than 12 million Canadians. Starting this year, we're taking the existing GST credit amount and raising it by 25% for 5 years. And in addition, we're providing a one-time payment equivalent to 50% of the GST credit this year. So what does that mean? Well, right now, a family of 4 receives about $1,100 a year with the existing GST credit. With the new Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit, that same family will receive up to $1,890 this year and about $1,400 a year for each of the next 4 years. A single person receives about $540 a year with the existing credit. With the new benefit, that person will receive up to $950 this year and about $700 a year for the next 4 years. On average, these payments make up for the higher level of food prices since the pandemic. In parallel, we're working to address the root causes of inflation and working on longer-term solutions to bring down the cost of groceries in Canada.
Okay, I'm going to pause the Prime Minister there before he gets into another recycled announcement. Let's be honest about what this is. First off, it's not nothing. That is some more money, but it's really only for the low-income families. I mean, regular run-of-the-mill average families are not going to see much or any of that. I don't know that this is the type of help that people were really hoping for. Even if it does for a family of 4 that's very low income, even if it does add up to the money that the Prime Minister says it will, that's what, 2-3 trips to the grocery store. And again, that's not nothing. Sure, that's great. I mean, I'm sure people will appreciate having a little bit of help. But let me put this out there. Could we have gone a step further and helped out way, way, way more people if we would just address the 2 biggest issues in the room? Taxation. What the Prime Minister is doing is giving people back some of the money he took. Why doesn't he just not take it in the first place? You know, we talked about this about a year ago. There shouldn't be tax on food. Right now, raw food at the grocery store, no GST. But if you go to a restaurant, there is GST. Food is food and we need it. There shouldn't be any tax on food. In fact, when we had that GST holiday for a while there, I think a lot of people appreciated it. And I know that restaurants in particular appreciated it because people's dollar went a lot further. People were much more likely to go out and support our restaurants when there was no tax. Why don't we just do that? And by the way, before he gets to the inflationary measures, there's one thing I want to hear, and I haven't heard this yet. I don't know what he's about to say yet. The one thing that I need to hear from this Prime Minister is we're going to bring down food inflation by eliminating the industrial carbon tax, because that is the single biggest driver next to corporate greed itself. That industrial carbon tax adds so much cost to food. As it's been said many times, when you tax the farmer, when you tax the truck driver who picks up the food from the farmer and delivers it to the terminal, then you tax the driver who takes it from the terminal to the grocery store. And then you add in the tax on this and that and the pesticides and the herbicides and all that sort of stuff. All of that gets directly funneled back to the person paying at the till. That carbon tax is costing Canadians a fortune. And frankly, we're not getting the desired result. We're not leading the world on climate change or fighting climate change, and we're paying taxes as if we are. It's insanity. That thing's got to go. But let's hear what the Prime Minister has to say about this.
That starts by improving the resilience of our supply chains. Because when issues arise in supply chains, from transportation to process to distribution, costs rise at every step along the way, and these costs end up on grocery bills. Tariffs, for example, are part of that problem. In September, the government launched what we called a new strategic response fund to help sectors across our economy, those impacted by tariffs, to adapt, to diversify, and to grow. And today, we are committing $500 million from this fund to support capital investments to help food businesses expand capacity, increase productivity, and strengthen our food supply for the future.
Okay, nothing on the carbon tax, although he did acknowledge that step by step, every one of those things does add up. But he didn't specifically say he's going to get rid of the carbon tax. Where is this $500 million going to go? Are we giving $500 million to Galen Weston to improve his efficiency? Are we seriously doing that? I hope we're not doing that. That would be absolute insanity. I don't get where the prime minister's coming from on that one. I mean, I can certainly acknowledge food inflation is real. We know for sure the carbon tax is a major factor in that. Whatever the prime minister is spending $500 million on here, I don't see how that's going to bring the cost down. Not until we address the number one issue. It is the carbon tax. Plain and simple. It's got to go. We're not changing the weather. Doesn't matter how much you pay in tax, you're not going to change the weather. That is a fact. This announcement from Prime Minister Carney yesterday, very reminiscent. We heard Justin Trudeau do the exact same thing with almost the exact same speech.
That's why we created the new grocery rebate, which will allow an eligible couple with 2 children to receive up to $467. This is a measure that will help make life more affordable for around 11 million individuals and families.
So today we're announcing that our government is launching the new Canada's Groceries and Essentials benefit. This will deliver hundreds of dollars more into the bank accounts of more than 12 million Canadians.
Also, nothing from the prime minister on why we have so many Canadians that are going to food banks, why we have so many Canadians that are food insecure. Before I get to the Q&A with the prime minister, I think it's important that we hear him answer some questions on this. I want to play for you the response from the Conservative Party. Yesterday, the Conservative leader in the House, Andrew Scheer, spoke to reporters outside the House of Commons. Listen to this.
GST top-up, can we get your response to that? Will the Conservatives be supporting it?
Well, first, I should start off by saying that Justin Trudeau tried the exact same thing just a few years ago, and it did not result in lower grocery prices. And remember, Mark Carney himself said that he should be judged on the prices at the grocery store. Today's announcement is a recycled Trudeau-era policy. It will not permanently provide relief. It is a temporary measure. I believe it won't even cover one trip to the grocery store for an average working family. But, you know, they continue to make the problem worse with their inflationary deficits, their hidden taxes on farming, like the industrial carbon tax that increases farm equipment and fertilizer. Conservatives will always support measures that provide relief, even if it is temporary. But we renew our calls to tackle inflation by ending the inflationary deficits, removing the hidden Liberal taxes on fuel, farm equipment, like the fuel standards tax that is already adding 7 cents a litre. That's set to rise to 17 cents a litre. So there are measures that we could adopt today, that the government could adopt today, that would permanently reduce food prices, not just a temporary fix, not just a temporary proposal that won't even cover one trip to the grocery store.
Okay. I mean, I think that that's completely fair. And yeah, I forgot about some of the hidden taxes on food, but absolutely. I mean, these are all factors in making things more expensive. Again, I do want to circle back and credit. I mean, sure, the prime minister, it's not nothing. He's given people something, but wouldn't it be easier to just not take it in the first place? Couldn't we go a lot further if we just permanently brought down the price of food as opposed to just rebating the lowest income Canadians for that? This came up in the House of Commons yesterday. First day of question period, and the prime minister wasn't even there. Didn't show up for day one. So Pierre Poilievre was squaring off against whoever it was that decided to speak for the Liberals in government. He asked a question about this and about the cost of food. Listen very carefully as you hear Liberal members of Parliament in the background laughing and heckling so badly, the Speaker of the House had to interrupt them.
Canadians deserve affordable groceries, but under this Prime Minister's watch, food price inflation is the highest in the G7. It's twice as high as in the States, twice as high as when he took office. He can't blame global factors when it's rising faster than any other G7 country. The real cause is his rising taxes on farmers.
I'm going to allow the honourable leader of the opposition to start that question over. I mean, we need guys started over there.
They're children. They are absolute spoiled little brats that make way too much money for a relative small amount of work, and clearly they don't take this issue seriously. They were laughing and heckling the leader of the opposition when he was stating a fact on the floor of the House of Commons, and all he wanted to know is, why can't we get rid of some of the other inflationary things that are affecting the price at the grocery store? They laughed and heckled him. That's how seriously this government takes this issue. Now, those are the people in the House of Commons, not Mark Carney. Again, Mark Carney didn't show up. Here is him doing some Q&A with the media.
Hi, Prime Minister Tom Perry with CBC. Since your speech in Davos, we've had Donald Trump threaten fresh tariffs on Canada if we cut a deal with China. He's rescinded your invitation to the Board of Peace. He started calling you governor like he did your predecessor. I'd like to know what you think about all that and what impact you think your speech had on Canada-U.S. relations.
Well, I think the first thing is that my comments in Davos laid out how we see the world, a recognition of how the world has changed. I think a point that Canadians understood months ago. In fact, I think Canada understood the scale of the change in U.S. trade policy, what it meant for our economy. We understood that well before other countries, and we started to react, controlling what we can control, building it at home, and very importantly, diversifying our trade partners abroad. That second bit is a positive thing. It's finding new partners. I mentioned in my remarks 12 new trade and security agreements in the past 6 months across 4 continents, more to come. For example, the commitment with India to work together is just one of many. And all of that builds our strength here at home, provides more opportunities, makes us less dependent on the United States.
Let's point out, though, Prime Minister Carney was elected specifically because he assured us he was the guy who could get a deal done with the Americans. And now not only has he not gotten a deal done, he's walked away from the table and he's doing everything he can to poke the bear and make sure that there's no deal with the Americans. Mark Carney doesn't want a deal with the Americans. Mark Carney was, and forever will be a globalist. He believes in the one world government. That was the entire point of his speech in Davos. He was rallying other globalists. And the whole point of that was, let's team up and screw America. That was the point, and Donald Trump knows it. We all know it. Hey, if the Prime Minister gets elected with a mandate to take Canada closer to China, then he has every right to do that. But that's not the way the election was framed. Canadians thought they were voting for the person best suited to deal with Donald Trump. Then once he got elected, we found out, actually, he's not only can he not get a deal done with Donald Trump, he's not even interested in a deal with Donald Trump. He doesn't want that. He wants the one world government. And if the Western Hemisphere is going to be isolated because of American policy changes, then he wants to be with the rest of the world, not with America. That's plain as day. That's not something we can dispute. Go back and watch his speech in Davos. That's exactly what he was saying. By the way, the Prime Minister did say he's going over very soon to sign a deal with India. Well, I can give you a spoiler alert today in Scott Fox After 9, because the deal he's going over to India to sign, the European Union just signed it. How about this?
Finally, Prime Minister Narendra, we both know our greatest wealth are our people. That is why I'm so glad that we are signing an agreement on mobility. We will facilitate the movement of students, researchers, seasonal and highly skilled workers. And this is also why we are launching the first EU Legal Gateway Office in India. It will be a one-stop hub to support Indian talent moving to Europe in full alignment with EU member states' needs and policies. This is good for our economies. This is good for the friendship between our people. And this openness benefits us all. As we conclude this 16th summit, let me reflect on another event of deep meaning. 2 weeks ago, India...
That is just a little bit of European Union leader Ursula von der Leyen announcing a new deal with India and Europe, facilitating the movement of students, researchers, and seasonal and highly skilled workers, launching the first EU legal gateway office in India to support bringing Indian talent to Europe. This is mass migration again. They're still doing it. They're just doing it a different way now. That's what we're going to be doing. Opening up the doors to many more people from India. I don't have a problem with people from India. I don't have a problem with immigration, period. I have a problem with bringing people to Canada when there's no house for them and no job for them. That's going to be my issue when the Prime Minister gets over to India and does the exact same thing. China and India are the two superpowers besides the Americans and the Russians, which we'll take out of the equation. And Mark Carney wants us aligned with the Chinese and with the Indians. That's just all there is to it. You can't deny that. That's what he's doing. Here's a little bit more from Ursula von der Leyen.
Mr. Modi, distinguished friend, I want to turn to innovation, because here too we share core values. The freedom of research and science is paramount for us. Europe and India will always choose science. We will always choose progress, the way forward. We will always choose technology at the service of our people. It's part of who we are. And our cooperation on human-centric, trustworthy artificial intelligence is one of the best examples.
What is human-worthy artificial intelligence? Hey, listen, there's more to come on this. The Prime Minister hasn't done the trip to India yet, but there's no reason to think the deal that he's going to do over in India isn't the exact same deal that the European Union just did with India. And it's going to be very similar to the deal that he did with China. That's just all there is to it. That's the way this is going, everybody. Yikes. I tell you what, I'm going to move on. That's a lot for the Prime Minister for one day. I've given him almost 40 minutes of time in Scott Fox After 9 today to talk about how great this is. There are obviously some things missing, but at the end of the day, it's still a little bit more money in some people's pockets, so that's a good thing. Now let's go to Queen's Park. Yesterday, the Prime Minister met again with Ontario Premier Doug Ford. And we're led to believe that they haven't spoken since Prime Minister Carney did that deal over in China to allow Chinese electric vehicles into the Canadian auto market. Doug Ford was highly critical of that. Well, not highly critical. He was critical. Let's just leave it at that. Doug Ford had the Prime Minister over to his home yesterday. The last time the Prime Minister and the Premier met at his home, which, by the way, is off limits to media. No scrutiny. God only knows what the two of them are talking about. The last time they did that is apparently when Doug played the anti-tariff ad for Mark Carney, and that's when trade talks with the Americans got suspended indefinitely. After that, they did do something in public. They went to a local pizza shop. They said that everything is fine. They're back together on Team Canada. No issues. Let's hear from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. When he got back to Queen's Park, he did a news conference alongside Melanie Joly.
Well, first of all, I want to welcome Minister Joly. We had a great conversation today, but I'll start off first with the Prime Minister. We sat down at the House, had an incredible, productive conversation of 5 different areas, roughly, and many other things as well. And I'm very confident that we're going to move forward. We're all part of Team Canada. And the way I describe it is we're a big family across the country. And sometimes families disagree, but make no mistake about it, I'd probably say 98% we agree on, not just with the Prime Minister, but all the premiers. But in saying that, everyone's protecting their area, protecting their turf. But I feel it was very, very productive meeting. And the only thing I had to do is I had to buy him 2 slices of pizza. And I only had one to keep my beautiful figure in shape here. And but it was a very good conversation. I'd also want to thank Minister Jolie for coming up with a great auto strategy that the minister has put together that we're going to be part of, and along with a few other folks in labor. And we're moving forward. We're in a very challenging time right now across the country, especially with what we're facing with south of the border, around the world. But we have the brightest, smartest people anywhere in the entire world. We can produce anything. We have the energy that people need, not just here, but around the world and our friends south of the border. We have the critical minerals, largest deposit in the entire world of critical minerals. We have many things going on, but I think we're all in agreement. We have to move faster, quicker, immediate. I keep saying that to every level of government, no matter if it's municipal, provincial, or federal. Let's start cutting the red tape, cutting regulations. It's going to be first out of the gate, especially with our energy and our nuclear build-out, no matter if it's SMRs or large-scale nuclear or our critical minerals. Let's start moving. Everyone's in alignment. And as I've always said, there's 2 things that President Trump has done very well. He woke us up, and he's united the country like I've never seen before. And again, I want to stress, there may be a few disagreements here and there, but we're all on Team Canada, and we're going to move forward like Team Canada. So I'll pass it over to the minister, and you can say a few words.
Yeah. Listen, Doug Ford has completely, it seems, compromised on his values and compromised on his support for Ontario's auto sector. I can't see it any other way. Apparently, Mark Carney wowed him with something amazing, and then Minister Jolie came up with some sort of an auto strategy. I don't know why she is coming up with Ontario's auto strategy, but here we are, and now everything is fine. If you work in the auto sector, and you thought you had a champion in Doug Ford, who was going to stand up and try and convince the Prime Minister not to go through with this deal and bring those Chinese electric vehicles, the spy cars, as Doug called them. He said he would try and prevent them from coming into the market. He didn't want it to get done. It did get done. He had no favor whatsoever with the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister did it without even telling him. He had one of his other ministers say, phone Doug Ford and tell him the deal. That was it. Carney didn't even pick up the phone and call him himself. He comes down to Toronto. They go to Doug's house. They have secret meetings without the media there. No scrutiny, no readout, nothing. They go out for a slice of pizza. Everybody jokes around and everything is good again. Doug Ford said the best thing that Donald Trump did was unite our country. Hey, at one point, Doug would have been absolutely right. About a year ago, the country seemed very united in the defense of Canada and opposition to what the Americans were doing. A lot's changed, and I don't think Doug is very good at reading the room, to be honest with you. I don't feel the same. There are at least 2 different provinces that are seriously considering separating from Canada. Alberta and Quebec. Last night in Alberta, big rally that the separatist movement was having. Thousands of people showed up, and they are fired up and they are motivated, and they're going to talk to their neighbors, and they're going to knock on doors. They're going to phone talk radio. They're going to do everything they have to do to try and convince more Albertans to vote in favor of sovereignty. Quebec could be in the exact same situation, and the Prime Minister's speech on the Plains of Abraham last week certainly didn't help that. This isn't good. Canada, absolutely, we were united. And I'm not saying we're not now, but let's read the room here a little bit, Doug. People are right pissed off. And people are highly, deeply skeptical of what this deal is with China and potentially what the next deal with India is going to be when we don't have a deal with the Americans and they're threatening to rip up the USMCA. This isn't good. This is all sugarcoating. I want to know what Carney said to Ford to make Ford completely back down on his opposition of these spy cars. And again, why are we letting Melanie Jolie come up with Ontario's strategy on autos? It doesn't make any sense. Let's hear some of the Q&A.
Premier, to you and the minister, you've been calling for a change to the EV mandate, that you don't want the 20% by this year. The federal government's paused that. You don't want 60% by 2030 or 100% by 2035. Minister, first, I guess we should ask you, have you agreed to a change in that policy as the Premier has requested?
So when we're thinking of the auto sector and the auto strategy, we're looking at different parts. Of course, we're having conversations with EV mandates, but that's why we're creating also the auto task force, to be able to continue to see how can we first make sure that we work on the future of the car manufacturing, okay? Because we know that lots is happening in the world in the auto sector. There's a lot of electrification projects, and at the same time, there's lots of investments that are made, and there's U.S. tariffs. So we will continue to find a way to support those who are making cars here in the country, while also looking at electrification. How we square that circle, how does EV mandates come into, is actually the conversations we're having, and so we'll have more to say in the coming weeks about that. I know.
Another failure by Doug Ford. He couldn't even get the EV mandates gone. You'd think he'd get some sort of a win after this meeting with the Prime Minister, except nothing. He's now turned in a complete about face. No opposition, I guess, now to these Chinese electric vehicles. Doug Ford should have said to Mark Carney yesterday, get out of this deal with the Chinese. We're going to focus on Ontario's auto workers. We're going to focus on Ontario's auto sector. And if it turns out that the U.S. ends up making all the finished vehicles, then we're going to be the place they get the parts from. That's the deal to be done. Doug Ford should have stood up for what he said he believes in. And right now, I'm not hearing any of that. Just coming out here, rah, 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 we're all united as Team Canada. Plain as day, every single Canadian can see that is simply not the case. That is not the case. And that's not how Canadians are feeling either. I don't understand why we bothered to go through this exercise yesterday. Whatever Carney said to Ford, Ford said, yes, sir, no problem. I'm back on side. Sorry I created some inconvenience for you. That's the way it seems. And so far, I haven't heard anything contrary to that, especially when you hear this new posture from Premier Ford. You know what Doug Ford should have said to Mark Carney? Get your ass down to Washington. You, personally, go. You sit in the Oval Office and don't leave until you come back with a deal for the AmCan Fortress with Donald Trump. It's doable. It's there. Go back to the beginning and listen to the comments from Secretary Besson. The Americans want a deal. They're shocked we don't have one yet. Why are we walking away from it, and why isn't Doug hopping mad at the Prime Minister?
Do you have concerns about the Chinese EVs that are going to be coming in, or is that something you're going to work through on the council?
Well, Rob, I think I've been pretty clear how I feel, but we're going to move forward. And my number one goal, and I know it's the ministers, I know it's the Prime Ministers, is about protecting the auto workers. And if that means if company's going to come in, no matter if it's from China or over in Europe or over in Asia there, we have one request: build the vehicles here, protect the auto sector, make sure you get your parts here, make sure we get the technology here, make sure you follow the guidelines. That's what we will always vouch for, to make sure that our number one concern is to protect the existing auto workers. It's a big employer in Ontario.
What a cowardly thing to say. Doug Ford insisted not even a week ago, mark my words, not a single job will be created manufacturing Chinese EVs in Ontario. Not a single job. Those were his words. Now we're just going to bend over and take it because Carney said so in a secret meeting with the media not allowed and no readout? What the hell is wrong with this guy? I am just outraged. To say we've got this new auto task force, we've created another level of bureaucracy. What do these people do? What's their plan? If you're going to announce a plan, tell us the goddamn plan. Don't come out and say we've got a plan and then just walk away. We'll tell you what it is later. What an insulting thing. I don't like to get too hot on this podcast. I try and keep myself grounded, but god damn it, I do not understand what is wrong with the Premier of Ontario. What the hell is he thinking? What does protect Ontario even mean? It's outrageous. Completely outrageous. I just can't figure it out. Why on earth would he come out here and say, well, I don't like it, but we're just going to go ahead and do it? Does he understand that it's his job to protect these jobs, that we elected him to protect these jobs, and he's just going to take Mark Carney's word for it? I mean, what do we do here? You know what? It's outrageous. Completely shocking. I want more. Yeah. This weekend is the Ontario PC Convention. I would love to know that other members of the Ontario PC caucus are as angry as I am. Because if they're not, then they agree with the Prime Minister and Doug Ford. Where are the Ontario Progressive Conservative members of provincial parliament? Where are they and where are their voices? Or have they been completely silenced? Where is Stephen Lecce? There's somebody I count on to be a voice of reason, someone who is full of common sense, a good statesman. He will make an excellent premier someday. Why isn't he talking? Where's Carolyn Mulrooney? Why am I not hearing from her? Does Sylvia Jones feel this way? Does Peter Bethenfalvey feel this way? Are they all good with these Chinese electric vehicles? The spy cars, as Doug called them? Were they invited to this secret meeting, second one at Doug Ford's house with the Prime Minister? I just can't anymore. I just give up. I can't. I'm completely bewildered that you can pull that big an about face after all that bluster last week. People got behind him. Yeah, you fight for those jobs. He just completely sold him out. Just like that. Now, maybe it's not a sellout. Maybe this new plan is going to save jobs. Then what's the plan? And why wouldn't you tell us? It's preposterous. It's outrageous. Every Ontarian has a right to be angry. Oh, and by the way, if you're thinking, well, you know what, next election, we'll get rid of them. I don't think we will. I mean, I'm looking through the opposition's pages. The Liberals don't even have a leader. They've got some very competent and capable people that would make a good leader, but they haven't even announced the rules for this leadership race, let alone gotten to the actual campaigning or electing somebody. So nobody's holding them to account. The NDP, the official opposition, is third in the polling behind the Liberals who don't even have a leader. And what is the NDP talking about today? This company in Brampton that builds armored cars, ICE placed an order with them, and they use those vehicles as part of their raids in America. The NDP thinks it's outrageous that a Canadian company is selling vehicles to ICE. Who cares? They're good jobs. We're not going to complain about that. That's the Americans coming to us. And by the way, that's not even a provincial thing. Canadian defense contractor selling to a foreign government who you claim is using them against their own citizens, that's squarely a federal issue. You got to go to Mark Carney, not Doug Ford. It's complete incompetence. Ontarians are completely surrounded. We don't have any other options here. Something's got to give here. This is crazy. Just completely outrageous. Let's move on. Yesterday, Washington, Carolyn Leavitt, press secretary for the Trump administration, gave a very compelling speech as she was ending her briefing. I want to play this. It's 57 seconds long, and then I'm going to give you a little more audio like I gave you yesterday.
Unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement in this country. And these agitators are making it nearly impossible for ICE to do their jobs and for federal law enforcement to carry out the will of the American people to deport the worst of the worst. I would just encourage everyone to please imagine in this room, all of you come to the White House every day to report on the President of the United States and the administration. You come into this briefing room, you walk through the gates of the White House. Just imagine if there were left-wing agitators or agitators of any kind who were in your face, who were doxing you, who were harassing you, who were physically threatening you, who were biting off your fingers in the case of two Border Patrol agents we saw this past weekend in Minneapolis. That would make it very difficult for you to show up and do your job here at the White House every single day. That's what these officers in Minneapolis are facing. That's why the president is calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Fry for these three very simple and common sense points.
Yeah. I mean, that was just a little bit of Carolyn's remarks. You can watch them on YouTube if you want. She's talking about the job that ICE is trying to do. Back to my point from yesterday. If you're upset about the deportations, you have an issue with the administration, not with ICE themselves. Harassing federal law enforcement officers who are committing a legal, lawful order is outrageous that you would taunt your own police like that. Let's go back to 2010. I'm going to keep doing this until I run out of them. And I don't know if I'm going to run out of them because there's a lot of them. At one point, this was something we all agreed on. Here's U.S. President Barack Obama.
There are those in the immigrants' rights community who have argued passionately that we should simply provide those who are illegally with legal status, or at least ignore the laws on the books and put an end to deportation until we have better laws. And often this argument is framed in moral terms. Why should we punish people who are just trying to earn a living? I recognize the sense of compassion that drives this argument. But I believe such an indiscriminate approach would be both unwise and unfair. It would suggest to those thinking about coming here illegally that there will be no repercussions for such a decision. And this could lead to a surge in more illegal immigration. And it would also ignore the millions of people around the world who are waiting in line to come here legally. Ultimately, our nation, like all nations, has the right and obligation to control its borders and set laws for residency and citizenship. And no matter how decent they are, no matter their reasons, the 11 million who broke these laws should be held accountable.
President Barack Obama, that was him in 2010, with words that every single person should listen to now. If you're one of those people encouraging these paid protesters, these agitators, these insurrectionists to continue causing chaos in Minneapolis to try and get news headlines and try and garner support, you're empowering the wrong side. You should be empowering ICE to do their job as safely as possible and get the people out that shouldn't be there. That was right from Barack Obama. How about another one from Barack Obama? I told you I can keep going.
Even as we are a nation of immigrants, we're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable, especially those who may be dangerous. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%. And that's why we're going to keep focusing enforcement resources on actual threats to our security.
Barack Obama deported 3 million people. He was a king on this. He's got way better stats than Trump does. 50 people died in ICE custody under Obama. There's no protests. The mainstream media wasn't freaking out with 24/7 wall-to-wall coverage because they knew Obama was right. He was right then. And Trump is just doing what Barack Obama said to do. That was Obama's thing. You just heard him bragging about deportations are up 80%. And by the way, that's what the American people want. That's what they elected Trump for. But hey, maybe you don't like Barack Obama. Maybe you don't think you should listen to Barack Obama. How about Hillary Clinton?
Last week, an undocumented immigrant who had been deported 5 times killed a 32-year-old woman, Kate Steinle, in San Francisco, a sanctuary city where local law enforcement does not enforce federal immigration laws. When you last ran for president, you supported sanctuary cities. In light of this terrible incident, does that change anything about your view on this?
Well, what should be done is any city should listen to the Department of Homeland Security, which, as I understand it, urged them to deport this man again after he got out of prison another time. You know, here's a case where we've deported. He ends back up in our country, and I think the city made a mistake. The city made a mistake not to deport someone that the federal government strongly felt should be deported. So I have absolutely no support for a city that ignores the strong evidence that should be acted on.
CNN and Hillary Clinton, very plain as day, saying sanctuary cities are a joke. They should go along with federal law. I mean, that's all you need. All President Trump is doing is following along what Barack Obama started. Trump tried to build the wall and keep people out. Biden got elected and actually had the wall torn down so that people could continue to pour in. There's a problem in America. They're trying to make their streets safer. They're trying to get rid of people who aren't supposed to be there. You've heard it. And if you want to hear yesterday's, go back and listen to that too. It had lots of Obama and Clinton in there. They were very clear and they were right. Barack Obama was right. Hillary Clinton was right. Chuck Schumer was right. Nancy Pelosi was right. What changed? Why is this all of a sudden wall-to-wall, nonstop, 24/7 coverage on the news? Why? Where did these paid protesters come from? Why is this only happening in Minnesota? And why is the entire Democratic establishment coming out of the woodwork to try and protect Minnesota, which is embroiled in a massive scandal of wasted taxpayer money? Why is that happening? One more from yesterday's White House press briefing.
With respect to the shooting in Minneapolis, we're seeing massive outrage from mainstream media and the left, but I'm just wondering, where was that outrage when Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, was executed by Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, who she posed no threat to in the U.S. Capitol?
Well, you raised a very important point, which I also believe that I just raised as well in those opening remarks, in that there has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media and picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday.
By the way, the person who was killed on Saturday by ICE is a nurse. A lot of people make a big deal of that. You know who else was a nurse? Laken Riley, who was raped and murdered by an illegal, undocumented immigrant who should have not been in America. And that's part of the reason that this is happening. Hey, listen, you're totally allowed, and I can't even fully disagree with you. You're allowed to think that ICE's tactics are over the top. You're allowed to even disagree with the policy that we deport immigrants. But one thing you cannot argue, it is not debatable, the hypocrisy from the mainstream media. When they've got a narrative that they want to run with, that's all that matters. And they are gaslighting. You're not getting unbiased coverage when you watch the mainstream media news. And if you take anything out of this episode or from listening to this pod, please watch the news with an extremely critical lens. You're not getting the news. You're getting the story they want you to hear. And with that, I will say thank you, friends. I'm sorry I got so hot about the Doug Ford stuff. I'm thinking about these auto workers, and it doesn't seem like anybody's standing up for them. I thought they had an advocate in Doug Ford. Now he appears to have pulled an about face. They say there's a plan. They haven't announced the plan. And it's too much. I just can't anymore with that guy. Friends, I'll try and get it together again for tomorrow and present you a much more professional lens where I try and maintain some composure and not let my emotions get the best of me. But that's just the way I'm feeling right now, and it's 100% coming from the right place where I'm thinking about the auto workers and their future and their jobs, and always thinking about the middle class here in Canada. Have a great day. I'll catch you right back here tomorrow with more After 9.